Hi, my name's Stewart Lynch, and I'd like to introduce you to a new turnkey solution for adding a sign-up and login workflow to Firebase using a Swift package for iOS that uses SwiftUI. It's a full-featured package that I created that includes sign-up, sign-in with email password, or with Apple, a password reset, and account deletion, as is Apple's requirement. Now before I get started, let me request that if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and leave a comment below, and subscribe to my channel. Make sure you ring the bell to be notified of new videos, and if you want to support my work, you can buy me a coffee. If this is something you want to learn how to implement, then keep watching. I do have a starter app for this video, and it's available for download from the link in the description below. It's not required, but I've added a few resources that'll make it easier for you to follow along and recognize the app in your simulator because I've added a unique icon created with the bakery app by Jordi Bruin. Also, if you prefer to follow along by reading or simply skip this video, you can find detailed instructions in the link provided below. The first thing you need to do is to create a Firebase project. And if you're using the starter project, make sure that you go to the target and ensure that the bundle ID reflects your own personal domain. Once you've created your project, you'll want to install the Firebase Authentication package. But for that, you'll need your bundle ID. So copy it to your clipboard. The next step is to log into the Firebase console by going to firebase.google.com. And then on the top right of the menu bar, make sure that you're logged in with your Google account. And when you are, tap on Go to Console. Once you're there, depending on whether or not you've ever created a project or not, you'll either see a button that says Create Project, or like you see for me, Add Project, because I already have some. So I'm going to tap on this Add Project. And I'm going to give my app a name. And I usually give it the same name as what I have in my Xcode project. So I'll call mine Migrate App. And then click on Continue. At the next screen, I'm not going to add Google Analytics here, so I'll just turn this off. Now I can tap on Create Project, and your project will be set up. And a progress wheel will show you the process and then display a Continue button when completed. So I'll just speed up the video a little bit here. When the project window is displayed, you'll need to add your Xcode iOS app to the project. So tap on the iOS button to get started. Here you have to enter some required information. First, your bundle ID, the one that we copied from Xcode. So I'll just paste it in here. Next, I have to enter, optionally, a name for the app, and I generally use the same name as the app again. Now I can click on Register App. At the next screen, I'm going to have to download the Google Services info.plist. So I'll tap on this button to download it. And then I'll open my Downloads folder and make sure my Xcode project is available, and I'll drag it into my project navigator. Make sure you've specified to copy items if needed. If you return to the console, you can click on Next. Now you can simply ignore the next screen where it talks about installing the SDK, because I'll be covering that next. So simply just tap on Next, and then on the following screen, tap Next again, until you reach the screen that says Continue to Console. So we'll click on that to go to the console for this project. Our app now needs to have both Authentication and Firestore database added. So on the left, click on Authentication, and then on the next screen, tap on Get Started. And in this screen now we can enable the two forms of logging in that we want to enable. Email password, and Apple. So we can tap on the little pencil icon on the right, and then on the next screen, all we have to do is click on Enable and click on Save. We'll do the same thing for Apple. This might look a bit confusing here, but there's no need to do anything else except turn it on. But we will have to configure our Xcode application and create something in our developer account. That'll be our next steps. Next, we'll click on the Firestore database in that menu on the side. And then at the next screen, click on Create Database. Now you can choose to start your app in test mode, but eventually you'll need to configure the security rules within 30 days. But we'll choose this test mode right now, and then click on Next. I usually leave the Firestore location at the default selected, and click on Enable. The provisioning of the database will now begin. Once it's completed, your configuration in the Firebase console for this app has now been completed. But you'll first have to copy your project ID. So, return to the App Console and click on the Project Overview gear icon and choose Project Settings. We're going to have to copy that project ID. But while we're at it, if you haven't already done so, change the public-facing name to one that will reflect your app. And this is going to be the name that is going to be used in the reset password email. So again, I'm just going to use My Great App. Now the final step that we're going to do before we add our Swift package is to make sure that we enable our application for sign-in with Apple. So we'll log into the developer account, developer.apple.com, and then I'll click on Certificates, IDs, and Profiles. At the next screen, we'll click on More, and then Configure. I'll click on the plus beside Email Sources to register a new email source. And the format is always the same. It's always no reply at, and then we just simply paste in that project ID that I copied from our Firebase console, and then follow that with .firebaseapp.com. Let me return to our Xcode project once more now, and click on our project to select the target. I'm going to click on Signing and Capabilities tab and tap on the plus button to add a new capability. I'll filter on Sign In with Apple and add it. We're ready now to install our package. The package is FBAuthentication. So from the File menu, choose Add Packages. And then on the following screen, you can paste in that URL into the search field and search. Once it's found, make sure that it has it specified to be up to the next major version. And in my case, it's starting at 1.0.0. And then you can click on Add Package. The process will start to verify that it's available, and eventually you'll be presented with a screen where you can simply click on Add Package once again. All of the required dependencies will be added to your project. And in particular, note the FBAuthentication dependency. This is the one that contains all of the views, classes, and structs related to the Firebase authentication process. At this point, I recommend that you build your app. And this may take a little while. Now it's time to start to build out our application. In the start point for our app, and that's the file marked with the @main attribute, add two more imports. One for Firebase and a second one for FBAuthentication. Remember, Firebase itself was a package that was installed as part of the dependencies of FBAuthentication. But we do need to access Firebase directly, because now in the initializer for this struct, we have to create an init, and in there we can say Firebase app.configure. And we'll also have to inject an instance of our user info object into the environment. And this object is part of the FBAuthentication package. And it's a view model that contains an instance of an FB user that will be used to log into Firebase using a specified authentication method, either email or Apple. And it will store the fbuser.name, the person's name, in a Firestore user collection. And it also maintains the authentication state and watches for changes. So, after content view, we'll inject an environment object of an instance of user info. Now, before you can implement the authentication process, you'll have to design a SwiftUI view that will be your starting point for your application once the authentication is completed. So we can give your start view any name you like, but for testing purposes, I'm going to call mine Home View. First thing that we have to do is import FBAuthentication. And then I'll create an environment object for our user info. I'll change the text view to say logged in as, and then I'll use the userinfo.user.name. And if I want to see what it looks like in the preview, I'll have to add the environment object to the home view in our preview provider. The final stage before testing is to update our content view. And this is where the power of FBAuthentication shines. First, we'll import FBAuthentication, and then I'll create an environment object for our user info instance. And then I'll change the body to be an instance of loading view. That's part of the FBAuthentication package. And for our start view, which is the only required argument, we'll pass in home view. Again, we'll stop the preview from complaining by adding an instance of the user info into the environment in our preview provider. So let's test out right now. I'm going to run it first in the simulator. And we see that the login screen appears with some buttons. Well, first of all, we'll have to sign up. So we'll tap on the sign up button. And here I'll enter the full name and a valid email for one of my accounts. I'll have to also make sure that the password meets the criteria. And notice that we're not allowed to tap the register button until we've satisfied all of the criteria, with that meaning passwords both being confirmed and matching the specified criteria, and the email address has to be one that is recognized as a valid email. I can tap on register, and if successful, you'll be registered and successfully logged in and taken to the home screen. And that text view in the center is displaying the name that we just entered when signing up. If I stop running the app and run again, you'll find you don't have to log in. Firebase maintains that state of logged in. That is, until you issue a logout command. Well, we haven't done that yet, but that's coming. So let's switch over to the Firebase console and verify that an authorization and a user record has been created for our application. So in the project, on the Authentication tab, you'll see an entry for your newly created user. And this is the record that's for the authentication only. It will display a record showing an envelope icon, and this designates that the record created is using the sign in with email password. If I go to the Firestore, we'll see a new user collection is being created, along with a record for this account with some unique ID. The document represents the user, and if you click on it, you'll see that there are 3 fields that are stored in this collection. So let's return to our app now, and I recommend we do this in the home view. We're going to create a logout button that'll handle the logout function. I often put this in a navigation bar. So just for testing purposes, let's embed our text view in a VStack. And then below the text view, I'll create a button. And here I need to call the logout function, which is part of the FBAuth. Now this will provide us with a completion handler that is a result. And so I can switch on the result. And we're going to be successful if we log out. So we'll just print logged out. If for some reason we fail, which we should never do, let's just print the error's localized description. If I run the app once more, I can tap on the Log Out button, and I'll be taken directly to the Login view. We'll need to test the Sign In, Sign Up with Apple. So let's switch Xcode now to my 10s Max, and I'll run this and display it on the screen. This time I tap on the Continue with Apple button. And then at the next screen, you can choose if you want to share your name and choose whether you want to share either your email address or hide your email. So I'll hide mine, and then I'll tap on Continue to be taken to the Home view. Perfect. Looks like I've signed up. Let me tap on Log Out to return to the login screen. I'll tap on the Continue with Apple once more, but this time I'm presented with only the option to continue. If I return to the Firebase console now, you'll see that I'm right here in the Firebase database, and I see that I have 2 records. And here's that new one. Notice that bizarre email address. If I switch back to the authentication, I see now that there is a second entry for this account with a different icon showing an A for the provider, indicating that this is a sign in with Apple. Now, if you've signed up with email password and you forget your password, we need to give the user the ability to reset the password. And that's what the Forgot Password button is. So if I run this now back in the simulator, and if I tap on Forgot Password, I'm taken to the next screen where I must enter the email address for the account that I used to create. It will give me correct error messages if you enter an unknown email address. But if you do, you can tap on Reset, and shortly you'll receive a notification back from Firebase with the instruction to click on a link that will have been emailed to you. So if I open up my Mail app now, indeed, here it is, and it's an email for resetting the password for My Great App. That's why we changed the name back in the Firebase console. If I tap on that link, I'm able to enter a new password. If I submit this now, my password gets updated. So if I return back to the simulator, let me try and log in once more with that new password. Great, I'm in. Now we want to be able to give the user the ability to change their name and to delete the account if they want to. That's a requirement for iOS from Apple. So the first thing we'll need to do is to provide the user the ability to get to their profile. And I suggest that you do this in your home view somewhere like the navigation bar. But for testing purposes, I'm going to add it as a button as part of our VStack. But the action on this button is going to have to toggle a Boolean state property that will initiate a modal sheet, which will be our profile view. So the first thing I'll do is create a state property that I'll call show profile, and it'll be initialized as false. Then I'll create a button that will toggle this state, and I'll put that after the logout button. To present the profile view, I'll use a sheet with the isPresented being bound to our Show Profile state property. I don't need the On Dismiss. But for the content, we're just going to provide Profile View. If I run the app now by tapping on that button, it'll display the profile screen. Let me enter a new name and then tap on the Update button. When you do so, you'll be returned directly to the calling view, and in our test application, that's our home view, we'll see that the text view reflects that change. And if I log into the Firebase console and go to the Firebase Firestore tab and the users collection with the document for this ID, you'll see that the name has been updated here too. To delete an account entirely, we'll need to access the profile and re-authenticate with Firestore. And this will prevent someone from accessing your unlocked phone and opening the app and deleting your account without your permission. There is a problem, however. This solution only deletes the authentication entry, preventing the user from logging in again. If they create a new account, it will not be linked to any existing Firestore documents, so they're orphans. You could clone this framework as I show in this video here, so that you can modify the code in the package to handle that deletion and any content associated with that user. For example, I've created a function in the fbfirestore.swift file named delete user data that will delete the user's corresponding document in the user's collection. To use this, you'd have to modify the profile view's delete account button's action to call that function prior to deleting the user. I've left that in as a commented code here so that if you clone the framework as I described in that video, you can uncomment this section and comment out this. This isn't a great solution, however. What if you have cloud storage or sub-collections or other collections all linked to this user ID? The best solution is to install the Firebase extension Delete User Data. With this extension installed, you can configure to delete all connected collections and storage items that are connected to the account being deleted. The caveat is, though, that you need to be on at least the Blaze pay-as-you-go plan. Once you have this established for your Firebase account and project, you can use the console to install the extension. Before you install the extension, though, make sure that you've set up Cloud Firestore and cloud storage in your project. And also make sure that you've set up Firebase Authentication to manage your users. With it installed, you can configure all of these different things. I just have to set the path for the Firestore users collection, and installation is very straightforward. You can install using the console. You select the app you want to install it in, and in my case that's my Grade App application. And then you can read all about the billing and usage information and click on Next. You can review the apps that are enabled and what resources are created and click on Next again. And then review the access that's granted to the extension. But remember, it's created by the Firebase team, so you should be quite safe. Then click on Next once more. Now you need to create the paths to all of the content connected to that user. In my case, it's only the Cloud Firestore, and it's only the users collection where each of the documents is identified by the user's ID. So, as per the sample provided in this field, I can add it just like this. If there were sub-collections within this collection, we could go recursive. But we only have one level, so it's shallow. Now I can click on Install Extension. That's it. It's installed. Back in our app now then, if you've signed up using email password, you can click on the Go to Profile and click on the Authenticate button. And you'll be asked to enter your password, and you'll be returned to a shortened profile view where you're asked to confirm. If you tap on Delete Account, you'll be taken back directly to the login screen and you'll no longer be able to log in using that account. If I switch now back to the Firebase console, I can see that that account has been deleted, both from the Firebase Firestore and from the Authentication tab. If you've signed in with Apple, let's run it on our device again. We'll make sure that we go to our profile. And this time when we authenticate, it's asking us to continue with Apple. When we do, we're taken to that shortened screen where we're asked to be able to delete the account. Again, we can go back to the Firebase console and now see that we have nothing there. So I'm going to quickly create a couple of accounts again because basically we're done. And what I want to show you though is how you can customize colors and icons. So the basics have now been explained and you can use this Swift package on any of your own projects. But as I said, there are some additional things that you can do. And that is to change the color of the buttons and the image that's displayed on the login screen. So when you present the loading view, you have the ability to specify a title, a primary color, secondary color, and a logo image. Similarly, when you present a profile screen, you'll be able to choose the primary color for that button as well. So the buttons used on the sign in, sign up, and forgot password screens all use the same primary color and secondary colors provided by the loading view. If none are used, then the primary color is System Orange and the secondary color is System Blue. The logo image itself should be any image, but it will be scaled to fit within a frame of 120 by 120. And it has to be uploaded to your assets folder. You can specify colors any way you like, but make sure that the colors look good in both light and dark mode. The text within the buttons will always be white. And in this example that I've created, I have an image and two color assets that I've named the color assets as the same as my two argument names. So within your loading view, we can enter a different title by adding in a title argument. So let's say create that login. I can add in a primary color, and for that I'll use my asset, which is the UI color named primary color. I can add a secondary color, which again is a UI color, and that's named the same as my asset, which is secondary color. Of course, we have to force unwrap those, so better make sure I've typed these correctly. And then for the final argument, I'll use a logo image, and that image is my CT logo. So if I run the app now, you'll see that the title has changed, along with the colors used on the two buttons, the login and sign up button, and the image itself has been changed to the Createch logo. As I mentioned, if we go and log in and tap on the profile view, we'll see that the profile button is still using the previous primary color, the System Orange. So I want to be able to change that to be my primary color. So I'll go back to our Xcode project, and then in Home View, where I present our sheet, which is the profile view, I'll simply pass in the primary color argument, which will be the UI color named primary color. And if I run that now one more time and go to the profile view, we'll see that that color has changed. Well, that's basically it. But what of the Firebase modules have been installed? Because normally when you install Firebase using Swift Package Manager or with CocoaPod, you specify which Firebase modules you want to include. And you can see here in the FB Authentication, we use these packages, the Firebase Auth, Firebase Firestore, and Firebase Firestore Swift Beta. So if your application is going to use additional modules such as the Firebase Analytics or Firebase Storage, you'll have to go back and install the Firebase package and select those modules as additional product modules. They won't get double installed. You'll just have to add those modules. As I mentioned earlier, if you're not using the Firebase Delete Data extension, you're going to have to manage the deletion of all other related collections yourself. That way, when the account deletion occurs, all related data will be deleted as well. If you're using additional storage like storage, or you have other kinds of Firebase modules, you'll have to ensure that you delete that data as well to comply with Apple's requirements. In that case, I recommend that you actually download the entire Swift package and install it as a local framework where you can modify the code accordingly. So let me explain. If you want to modify the functions in a package, you're going to have to download it and install it locally. Currently, if you drill down into the package dependencies and try to edit one of these files, you'll find that it's not possible. So we're going to have to grab that package repository and download it and install it locally. So go to your project and display the package dependency for your app. If you double-click on FB Authentication, you'll be able to copy that URL. Now we can remove the package from our application. I can open my web browser now and go to the copied URL for this Swift package and download the code as a zip file. That's been downloaded and expanded to my Downloads folder. And I'm going to drag that into the same folder as my Xcode project. And notice it comes in as a framework. And all of the package dependencies are getting added as well. We also have to ensure that our target is using this framework. So on the General tab in the Frameworks, Libraries, and Embedded Content, click on the plus button to add this as a framework. And you'll see that it will show up, so simply select it and click on Add. If I run my app once more, you'll find that it executes exactly the same as before. The difference is that now I own the framework, and I can modify it or add to the content. Just make sure that if you are going to have to access your own classes, structs, and properties from outside of the framework, they're going to have to be marked as public. So let's just verify that the application is still running perfectly. It is. And notice now on my simulator, I have that nice icon created with the bakery app. So I hope you've enjoyed this and will be able to use this Swift package in your projects. Thanks for watching.